I'm Tiffany Vassos, VP of Design and Construction at Dave's Hot Chicken. I've been here for about 2 years. Right now we have 48 restaurants, and this year we're going to be building somewhere between 75 and 100. And then prior to this, I was over at Blaze Pizza. I was employee number 4, and I grew it from 2 locations to 350 locations in about 5.5 years. So I've had a lot of experience with startups and really ramping up quickly, and then dealing now with COVID and the aftermath of that, and figuring out how to do that again in a very quick way. And that's where I'm at.
Andrew?
Morning, everybody. Andrew Bello, Vice President of Design and Architecture at Inspire Brands. We are, I'll say 8 brands. We say 7, but we have a burgeoning concept out of Buffalo Wild Wings called Buffalo Wild Wings Go. So we consider that 8. My team, a few members here, David and Christina are here as well, and Jeff from construction, heads up our construction team. We're doing we'll do a little under 800 new locations this fiscal year. We'll do about 1,200 remodels across all of those brands. We're a shared service organization, so a little different. Prior to that, I was at MGM Resorts International doing high single concept restaurants and bars, and claim to fame before that, I spent about 9 years at Starbucks. So bookending the scale world of food and beverage and restaurants. This is my first foray into franchise development. That's been very interesting and very a great learning experience and rewarding. But that's who I am, and that's our state of the overall business.
Good morning, I'm Jim McPhail. I'm the CDO over at Sweetgreen. We recently went through our IPO in November. We've got about 156 stores now. Just opened San Diego last week. We're real excited about continuing our mission of connecting people to real food. We're all company owned. We think that's kind of an important part of our supply chain and how we do organic farm to table. The things that we're really focused on is kind of building the next kind of 35 stores for this year, entering a couple new markets, investigating kind of where the millennials are going and kind of where our core consumer is headed, and kind of also just understanding kind of what the world's going to look like. We're a pretty adventurous brand. We were first to move in some of the digital spaces several years ago with Nick, Nate, and John, kind of really understanding how to customize and be in the digital frontier. And I think even Nate was here a few years ago in a conversation around bring that kind of level of customization and intimacy through an app and through our design schemes. And so, for us, it's learning how to grow. We're still a very young company, but also doing it in a way where we can simplify our business, say no to a few things so we can do a few things well, and then also making sure that we continue to stay community-based while growing at scale.
Wonderful. Thank you for providing that overview. Again, very varied, and it just helps us understand the contrast between you three. And, in the conversations that we've been having with you, and I think, Jim, last night you said to us, during this last 2 years ago, we had our RestaurantSpaces event, and then a few days later, the pandemic kind of happened, and the world melted in on itself. And, you said it's been the best of times and the worst of times this last 2 years. So I'd like to get a handle, from all three of you, from right to left this time. What has changed for good after this last 2 years? What's never going to be the same?
Yeah, for us personally, I joined Sweetgreen back in 2019 in October and had just a fantastic 4.5 months, and then the world shifted, right? And kind of seeing that at the forefront of it, where a lot of our portfolio is metro-based and in New York. And when I came on board, I said, hey, as a real estate guy, quote unquote, our exposure to markets is a little heavily weighted into CBD and bi-coastal. And then the pandemic hits. And then what that caused was, this kind of great migration. And a lot of things where our customer, who was typically a primary lunch customer in an urban environment, migrated to working and having lunch at their home. And our brand went with our customer. So it was kind of the great awareness of our brand in markets that we typically had almost no awareness, where the financial markets moved to Charlotte and to Miami. The tech markets moved to Austin and Denver. And so we began to open in those locations, and it allowed us to really unlock our brand in a way that we weren't aware of prior to the pandemic. I think the second thing that we kind of took away is it gave us a chance to kind of really rethink how productive we want our urban engine to be, and look at our kitchens and how we can make them more productive. Because when you're running at full speed, I think people use the kind of conversation that when you're doing great, it's really hard to change the tires in the car while you're going, at Mach 5. And so for us, it allowed us to look at some of the things we would have been wanting to change for a while and kind of make those changes in our kitchen to make it more productive and more efficient. And then the final thing for us is kind of really focusing on what does the pandemic mean the beginning of and the end of? And I think it's the beginning of a couple of things, but I do think it's the end of marginality. I think with the people quitting their jobs because their jobs are marginal. I think people are moving because where they lived was marginal. I think people are making different dining decisions because it was marginal. I know my kids decided they weren't going to go to school in college because it was online. It was very marginal. And I think that the more that we can focus on things not being marginal, will be something that we're very focused on, because being an employer of choice is going to be super important. Making sure that your team member experience isn't marginal. Otherwise, they will just quit you, right? And everyone here, I think we're going to have I don't know if this is an answer all session or much more of a group therapy, right? It's like, man, I don't know, how's your labor issue? Oh, it sucks. How's yours? It's terrible, right? Hey, you having supply chain problems? No, not at all. Liar, right? So there's all these things going on. Because I think that things are moving into excellence and things are getting out of marginal, and then those who are going to be able to accelerate are going to win, and those who are going to have to think about it for a while may not be here in a few years. So I think that's kind of where our headspace is at during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely want to come back to a lot of the things you just said there, Jim, but I'll pass it along to you, Andrew.
It was kind of a bipolar world, right with COVID, and we're still feeling the repercussions, as everybody here is. I mean, we can talk about supply chain and labor. Everybody's got the same problem at the end of the day, and I think at some point it'll either go away for everybody, it'll become normal for everybody, and when that will just be the state of business, and we'll work from that platform moving forward. We've really focused. First of all, we were fortunate to have so many brands, and when you have that many brands, you can really hedge across really almost any situation, right? We saw our Sonic brand, for example, built for COVID. It blew up. That business completely took off beyond, I think, anybody's expectations. So there's a lot of momentum there, and there's a lot of interesting growth there. And then we have Buffalo Wild Wings that was full service sit-down restaurant. You can imagine that business struggled a little bit during COVID, still coming out of COVID. Both of which, at the end of the day, gives us the opportunity to continue to innovate and look towards the future. I think as a company, we recognize that we can live in today, but if we're not really focused on the 3 to 5 years from now, we'll fail. So we have to manage today, and I think we're managing today just like all of you are managing today. It's a street fight every single day, every single hour, and you never know what the next thing is. Today it's air conditioners, tomorrow it's paint, then it's walk-in coolers, right? We all feel that, but fortunately, there's the support and the desire in our organization to continue to look forward and innovate across all those brands and not let success can cover up a lot of problems. And it would be very easy to take a brand like Sonic and just let it run. But we don't have that culture today, and I'm fortunate to be there during this time. So we want to stay focused on the future. We look 5 years out constantly. My team is always, it's 2023 for my team at this point. If we haven't developed something today, it's not happening. So we're really focused into the future. And we're going to stay there, and I think that's where we're at today. Is street fight in the moment, but always be looking for those opportunities and deliver that 4-wall unit economics for our franchisees. We're also company owned as well. Some brands more than others. We just purchased 30 franchise locations from our Dunkin' portfolio. We think it's important to have the credibility in the business to own and operate a percentage of every single brand we have. Buffalo has a high ownership. Arby's has a high ownership. It enables us to innovate. I think if we were fully franchise model, it's very difficult to innovate through your franchisees. There are some that are interested in it, but at the end of the day, we built that credibility with mixing up the business and staying focused on the future.
Great. Tiffany?
So for us, our brand really started at the beginning of COVID. We did have a few locations that were open in the downtown LA market. We were able to shift pretty quickly to a very high-functioning, great delivery platform. We started to implement and started to really review our operations and figure out what we need to do so that we could deliver great food to our guests. We are fortunate at Dave's Hot Chicken to really have a food that can travel well. So COVID, while it was very challenging for our dining rooms, it really was sort of a blessing for us to really hone in our skills with the third-party delivery and our online ordering platforms. So that was really a focus for the beginning of the pandemic. But through that, we had some pretty phenomenal sales and started to really onboard a lot of really great franchise partners all across the U.S., Canada, and now we're starting to go into the Middle East. So with that comes a lot of growth and very, very quick growth. So we really had to spend a lot of time and effort making sure all of our processes and procedures were in place so that we could handle that growth. And one of the things that I really, really value is our partnerships with our vendors. I've worked a lot with some really great vendors over the years, and a lot of those relationships have traveled with me through both of the brands that I've helped grow. And I feel like with that, I've been able to leverage those partnerships and call for favors when needed, and that's been really, really helpful in our success. Even though supply chain is an issue and all of that, I do like to leverage those relationships. And one of the things that has been successful is just over communicating with those partners so that everybody understands what we're doing, how quickly they're coming, how quickly the openings are coming, so that there's really no gray area between what our needs are and what we need to have delivered. So over communicating has been a really big thing for me. The other thing is I expect my vendor partners to communicate back. So I know with supply chain issues, sometimes there is some, not so great conversations taking place, but if we're all real with each other and we can understand what that issue may be, it's a lot easier to figure out a solution to get past it. And we've been pretty successful with that. Oh, and then the other thing I think that's been a really large focus for me is not just relying on just the vendor partners that we purchase from, but going straight to the manufacturer so they understand what we need as well.
Great. And you touched on a lot of great things there, Tiffany, and I'd like to come back to that because, hey, we've got a whole bunch of vendors here, so maybe we can get some heated discussion going. But, you touched on growth there and the fact that you're growing so quickly, and we talked about the way that there's a redistribution of the customer there that you mentioned there, Jim. So for you, Tiffany, and I know talking to you leading into this, you mentioned making more educated real estate decisions. So I guess with that growth and finding the right places, can you talk us through that expansion for you guys?
Yeah, so for our first locations, we were really focusing on doing a lot of in-cap locations. And then as we've started to span across the U.S., we have a lot of franchise partners that are really knowledgeable in the drive-through market. And while those are really great locations, sometimes we have to be strategic about how we want to enter a new market because, a lot of what the Dave's Hot Chicken experience is coming into our spaces and really feeling the vibe of the location and seeing the graffiti and hearing the loud music and seeing our team members enjoying themselves. So having just a drive-through experience can be somewhat challenging when you lose that. And our price point's a little bit higher than a lot of fast food may be. So you can quickly shift from being a fast food experience to being an overpriced fast food experience. And so that's been something that we've been very strategic with. We're also looking at a lot of second-gen restaurant locations because we can usually get into those quite a bit faster, especially if it is something that maybe hadn't been open for all that long. We can reuse walk-ins, we can reuse hoods, we can look at plumbing locations or keeping restrooms or whatever it may be. And when we can do that, we can certainly get those locations open a lot faster. So definitely focusing on that.
Perfect. And just touch on that as well for you, Jim. You guys have always had a really strong, in terms of collecting data and using digital. You've had your app for years now. So, you're entering new markets. How useful has that been? How are you utilizing data to make those kind of decisions?
Very well. I think that, we have a really good handle on who our customer is right now. right? I think we have a really good handle on where our customer is right now. I think the trick for us is, we kind of look at our place as kind of, we're in the hospitality space, we're in the restaurant space, but we're also in the real food space, and I think those all kind of create different segments. So I think it's not as important about for us kind of where our customer is, but kind of where our customer is going and how to educate more customers. I think that's kind of, I want to hit on something that Tiffany kind of said about, getting your consumer into your restaurant or into your store. I think that this is going to be a little bit disparaging, but I think that drive-through experience is an oxymoron, right? It's like saying I had a really good toll booth experience, where I was like, oh, great, I got through. I mean, I don't think necessarily that is an experience. It's just a channel, right? And I think the way that brands grow is by creating experiences. So I think we're putting our toe in the water on pull-through and drive-through very cautiously. I think it will ultimately end up being a big part of the portfolio, as long as we understand how to make it an experience. And we understand that how do we get our brand to kind of push through that. And I think that ultimately, when you talk about our customer and kind of where our customer is going, there's a couple of things we do know about our customer very well. One of which is that hygiene's here to stay, right? The idea of cramming as many people you can into a restaurant, into a line, probably is going to vacillate a little bit here and there, and I think people really want to have personal space. I think that customization is going to be key, and content is going to be key, whether it goes all the way through your supply chain, even down to the training of your teammate. I think that we've got to make things more individual, because people expect that. They expect that kind of variability now. And then we think that there's going to be a comeback to community. We strongly feel that people are tired of working out in their garages, and they're tired of kind of working at their kitchen tables, and that at some point people want to get back together like this kind of event, right? I mean, more of these things are going to happen, and you can see that already happening in the fitness space, where the fitness space was dead and Peloton was king, and now Peloton's dead and fitness is king, right? There's all these things that are going on that are going to see this kind of new normal, and it won't be 100% one way or the other. But the one thing that will exist is that as humans, we're communal. And bringing people back into hospitality, I think, is going to be a big part of it. So, for us, we're still very, very focused on great real estate and creating experiential design setup, so that when people come in, they understand what our food ethos is about. Because I think, quite frankly, your storefront still has been your greatest point of differentiation as a brand. And I think, so putting the shingle out, even though there's all kinds of social media and whatnot, having a great shingle and a great storefront, a great experience still is going to be how you win the game, I think.
We have a question in the back here for Andrew.
Hey, Andrew. Your CEO, Paul Brown, at the RFDC in November announced your new Buffalo Wild Wings concept, Buffalo Wild Wings to Go. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping you can kind of help us understand the strategy behind that. You've got a brand that was doing $3 million. It's shrinking. There's net closings. And now you're announcing $1 million fast casual brand. And I guess the question is, it's a super crowded space, wings. Are you confusing your franchisees? Mm-hmm. And I guess the last point is, I think everyone here knows someone that Inspire Brands is laid off at some point. You're trying to do too much with not enough resources.
A few questions there. Let me unpack that for a minute. I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Just help us understand why this repositioning of the whole brand from casual dining to fast casual.
It's a great question. As you can imagine, we talk about it every day, all day. During COVID, one of the great aspects that showed up for Buffalo Wild Wings was the takeout business. As you can imagine, people were not coming in and dining, and there's still jurisdictions where we're not open. We're not 100% open. Devastating to that business overall. So through that, understanding the takeout model, there was a clear desire to continue to engage with our brand and have the Buffalo Wild Wings experience not in the restaurant. You can imagine, as a sports bar restaurant, the in-house experience is everything. Camaraderie is important. It's one of our main brand aspects. And if you've seen the latest marketing campaign, ad campaign, the greatest of all times, which I'm biased, but I thought that was really well done. understanding that unlock of that business is combined with the distance between sports bars and what it takes to develop a full sports bar built from the ground up, essentially. Ideally, Tiffany mentioned end caps. Everybody wants end caps. Who doesn't want an end cap? It's the most economical development you could possibly do is an end cap. Everybody's chasing those. But we have an opportunity to go into the neighborhood markets where we can fill a void. You have Wingstop out there, obviously. You mentioned a crowded space. They're doing very well. There's a desire to have our Buffalo Wild Wings experience in a takeout environment, and we can deliver that to our guests without having to come to a full sports bar or to grow that business by building another sports bar. So this is really an infill strategy for that. And it's been, I think we just opened our 21st at Georgia Tech this week, so it's very new. We're looking to do 90 or 100 really with franchise this next year and grow from there. So the business is there. And we've spent a lot of time on the culinary side with Buffalo Wild Wings over the last couple of years. COVID enabled this business to really dig deep and reevaluate everything that it was delivering to our guests. And now we're starting to enact that. The other thing we've been working on is what we call choice model, which is being able to order at your table via bring your own device, order your own food, drinks, manage your own experience. If you desire, it's called choice for a reason. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can't call it choice if we don't offer a choice. And that's been very successful. So the business is there, it remains there. And getting out into the neighborhoods where people can get that is also a compelling experience, and that's why we do it. We wouldn't do it if the business wasn't there, right? We're still proving out the concept, but we're already have franchisees lined up and very excited, and Buffalo Wild Wings franchisees, right? So we also have to defend our franchisees, right? They have a significant takeout business at their sports bars, a lot of them are ready to join us, and it's a great business, and we'll continue to develop that. Did I answer all your questions? I think you had another one too. Yeah, sure.
So we have another question that came in through Slido. Omar, it's your question. You want to ask it?
Hey guys, Omar Presswich from Wags Capital and Dirty Bird specifically. So first of all, I love what you guys are saying. I think it's an important, I'll stand up. I'm a short little guy. I think the position is really interesting, the switch. I came from the fashion industry. So Sweetgreens, I used to work in downtown LA and I'd get my food all the time. So you're nailing the customer on the head. Now that I'm in the food and beverage industry, this question specifically for Tiffany. You said you scaled, you went from, was it the pizza restaurant from 5 to a few hundred? When you're opening up restaurants at such a rapid pace and you're hiring a lot of individuals, the climate's changed as far as the people you bring in. So how do you guys incorporate culture, and what's the strategy? I guess it's a two-part question. One, how do you attract a young, entitled demographic and have them want to really be a part of your company culture and be enthusiastic? Because when people walk in, they represent you and they represent the food. So how do you position your culture that way? And the second part is, I guess I have multiple questions, but the second part is how do you market that? Do you do or rely heavily on word of mouth with your employees and team members, or do you rely heavily on social media and try to compete with some of the other dogs?
Yes. We, from a culture standpoint, I don't know if you've experienced, going to a Dave's Hot Chicken, but the culture starts in our restaurants, where it starts from the top and it goes down, and you can feel it from every experience, whether you're talking to our CEO or you're talking to, someone on the marketing team or someone inside the restaurant. But we're very, very high energy. Everyone, as you could tell right now, I'm very high energy. But we are very high energy. There's a lot of camaraderie. A lot of us have worked together for a long time. A lot of leaders that are on our team actually were part of the Blaze path that I was on. So we all know each other. And a lot of the things that were really great at Blaze, we've brought over to Dave's, and things that were not great at Blaze may still be there. But that's been really strategic. We started in a parking lot in downtown LA. We've never really strayed from that. I mean, we're not trying to be something that we're not. We're not hoity-toity. We're not, anything like that. It's all about coming in, having great chicken, having a design experience that you probably haven't experienced anywhere else. And that really translates through our entire brand. As far as, sourcing talent, to be honest with you, we're very, very lean. We wear a lot of hats. We handle everything on my team in particular. We handle everything from the handoff from real estate all the way to handoff to operations. So we have our hand in marketing. We have our hand in ordering for operations. We have our hand in, placing orders with equipment, whatever it may be. We're really just very involved. I think when we're talking about finding talent, our biggest thing is focusing on bringing in great franchise partners, and in doing so we can really support them, and we become a person on their team, but they end up doing a lot of the work as well. So they are almost like an extension of our team because we work so closely together. Does that answer your question? What else do you want?
Well, we'll continue that strain there, because I do want to jump into the challenges that everyone's facing, and labor is a good place to start. And Tiffany, I know what have you been doing in back of house to improve your operations there? And I want to dive into what everyone else is doing as well on that.
So when we first started, we were doing single-sided make lines. And then as COVID hit, we really recognized, as I had said earlier, about needing to focus on third-party delivery and that online ordering experience. And we knew we needed to start moving very quickly and fulfill orders very quickly. So we actually hired a company by the name of Productivity Advantage, and they came in and we spent a lot of time with them figuring out exactly what needs to happen operationally so that we could fulfill orders very quickly. And so we started implementing double-sided make lines and then duplicative make lines so that we could separate dine-in orders from third-party delivery and online orders. And that's been really, really efficient for us. And then as we have been adding on drive-through locations, that's been really strategic too, because we can separate those orders so that if you are in the restaurant or if you are going through the drive-through lane, you're not waiting longer because we're making everything in the same place.
Okay. And anyone else want to chime in there too? I mean, for you, Jim, you've had double make lines from the start. And I guess what are you focusing on now in terms of improving that back of house, and where's the intersection of making it a nice experience for employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, Rick Shelfsalver, TPA, is fantastic. I used him at Phil's, and I think that we've done some work with him as well over at Sweetgreen. I mean, he's really a productivity genius, on back of house stuff. And I think for us, when we looked at productivity, it wasn't just about getting units out, but how to make it easier for our teammate. Working at a Sweetgreen is really hard. I mean, we're 2/3 back of house, 1/3 front of house. We do everything in our kitchens from scratch. When you come on board, and you do your onboarding for a week and a half or two, it's a day making Caesar salad dressing. I'm like, can't we buy this? And it's like, no, understand the brand, Jim. So it was, there's a lot of things that go into the back of house that's very difficult, because when you're a from scratch kitchen, everything kind of that you have to do has to happen in that back of house, and it becomes very congested. And so how you lay it out to make it a better experience for your teammate. And I think for us, it's been about, reapportionment, repositioning, kind of what are the key adjacencies that are important for us. And if we get a couple points of productivity out of that, great. I think if we get a couple points of retention out of that, better, is kind of where we're focused. So we're incredibly focused right now on our teammate, and kind of be the employer of choice. Because I think if you work hard, if you enjoy the environment you're working in, that's super important. And I think that I will just come back on the young and entitled thing. I think that not all the young are entitled, right? I think I've raised a couple of decent kids who have had a lot of opportunities, but they're not entitled. And there's a lot of people out there who understand the value of hard work as long as it's rewarding. I don't think people are afraid of hard work. I think they're afraid of hard work and not seeing a reward, or not seeing it tied to a mission, or not seeing it tied to their values. And I think if you can kind of look in that lens, and recruit through the lens of value and reward and mission alignment, and also make it a fun place to work, or at least a rewarding place to work. That's kind of where our intersection is in the labor market.
Perfect. And Andrew, for you, I mean, you've touched on this a few times, the 7 to 8 brands, and I mean, you're experimenting on many fronts, and you've got a huge advantage there, cross-learning between those brands. So what are you working on right now?
We don't have time to have that conversation. There's so much going on. Yeah. Which is great. I mean, I obviously, hopefully my team feels the same way. There's so much to do. It's rewarding and feels great. I'll just touch on the labor piece a little bit and the dual make line. To me, our brands, have dual make lines. I think overall in the industry, that's not new. To me, that's a throughput challenge, not a labor challenge necessarily. And how we have our customers feel like they are getting an accurate order in the timeline that they perceive to be great, right? So when you're thinking productivity, I think dual make lines. We're fortunate to have, obviously, at our size and scale, we have an internal, what we call Restaurant Operational Innovations team. And we just opened up an innovation center just north of our headquarters in Atlanta. And it's what you think it is. It is a full-blown innovation kitchen. We experiment with equipment. We experiment with operational modeling. We experiment with culinary across all of our brands. So, we've been able to leverage our scale to be able to lean in on something like that, understanding not everybody's able to do that. But that's a focus operationally back of house. I think the other thing we're recognizing internally as a team, and we need to pay attention to, is the effects of the front of house by the back of house. It is really a symbiotic relationship, and I think Inspire is only 4 years old. Inspire did not exist 4 years ago, and when you think about now, it's the second largest restaurant company in the United States with the acquisition of Dunkin' that doubled us overnight, and we're still working through that integration. It just really enables us to think about those interactions. We have things that come up back of house, and if we're not talking to each other, if we're not communicating, we're talking culture a little bit earlier, corporate culture. How do we stay open? How do we continue to innovate? How do we be mavericks in the innovation space, but make sure we're all talking to each other? And I think that's key as well. Is that it's not just an equipment swap. There are front of house effects that, unbeknownst to you at the time, might not actually work out. I'll just give you one example. Jimmy John's. We've been experimenting with an ice auger system to get ice from the back of house to front of house. Well, when you install that, there's a lot of architectural elements that go on around that. There's soffit work, et cetera, et cetera. And when you start to do the math, you're like, oh, well, your capital cost, the ROI on that is way too far out. That doesn't make sense. You might as well just bring the ice out, right? So innovation is a journey and a spectrum at times, and there's unforeseen impacts on the front of house that I think a lot of us on the design side are close to and make sure we stay connected with on the back of house.
Great. Innovation is a journey. Sounds like a song title.
Yep.
Great. Look. You had an interesting point about focusing on the future before, Andrew, and I do want to do that. But we have to touch on this supply chain, equipment and material shortages and delays. And I just want to get all of your take on the lay of the land. Tiffany, I'll start with you. Leveraging your existing relationships, potentially getting sweet deals from that. What's your experience? We'll start with you.
It's certainly challenging right now. There's no doubt about it. As I said earlier, it's about communication and really talking with your vendor partners. There are certain items that, we're purchasing for locations, which are what I like to refer to as brandatory. Then there's other things that are a little bit more, we could be a little bit more lenient with. So there are times when you have to substitute in like alternate partners or alternate manufacturers for certain things. But there are a core group of things that we have to have. And, my job is to make sure that I'm working with those manufacturers. I'm working with our partners to get whatever that may be in stock and ready for when we need it. It's definitely challenging at times with a couple of the, various pieces, but we've been pretty successful because we are communicating. One thing that I've done is I've tried to get out ahead of it by purchasing in bulk on behalf of the company and then allocating, as openings come on board. So that's been a very helpful thing. But there still are a couple things that we just are having challenges getting. And it does impact sometimes your ability to get inspections and turn a space over. So that is something that we deal with, but we've been pretty successful in working with our partners, being communicative, and then kind of getting past it.
Great. Jim, I'll throw it to you now.
Yeah, I think that, ditto on any number of levels. I think that one of the great things, mentioned is, do you have a supplier, a vendor, or a partner? And I think if you have a partner, it's a different dialogue. And I think that the transparency of the pipeline, and I think as you mentioned, over communicating. We're very open with our partners about what we're looking at and what we're trying to get done. And so I think our biggest challenge has clearly been probably similar to everybody else is like, hey, how about the refrigeration for walk-in? What's going on in the HVAC world? And we're literally ordering that stuff. Like the very first thing we design now is our engineering. And we will order all of our HVAC and engineering before we're done with our plan sets. So we've had to move with our partners, taking things off the contractor and the GC contract and doing it first by owner in order to kind of keep things on track. And I think that, I kind of a philosophy that if money or time can solve it, it's a challenge. If it's not, it's a problem. Right, and I think so. If we got people issues, we got problems, right? Or if money and time can't solve it, it's just not available, we got a problem. And I think so. We've been kind of working through challenges, and usually, if you're ahead of the ball game long enough, you can wait long enough, and it doesn't have to cost you as much. So having the flexibility in your pipeline to move things around, so you can kind of take from Peter and give to Paul on some of your assets you've already pre-purchased is something that we've been doing all the way down the line. But again, I think that the opportunity to partner is important. I think the opportunity to be very transparent on what you're doing and over communicating. And again, I had a mentor of mine that used to say that bad news isn't like a red wine. It doesn't get better with age. If you've got it, tell me now, and so we can begin to address it. And so the earlier you can be open about what the challenges are and be communal about the challenges, I think that's important. And then pre-ordering and bulk buying. We started doing that probably mid last year and buying out our patio packages and a lot of our equipment because that part, I think, as you said, is it's brand mandatory or brandatory, which is I'm going to totally co-opt that term. Totally, it's a friggin' she just laid it out there. She should have just full on already trademarked it now, but my company's going to use it as a Jimism now. But I think that from a standpoint, those are the things that money and time can't solve those. You have to have them. If you don't have your kitchen, you're not in business, right? And so I think those are the things that you really kind of major in the majors and don't worry about the minor stuff so much. People get really focused on the small stuff, and when you're in crisis, which we are, as long as you get the big stuff done, don't beat people up about it and move on because you're still opening stores in a world that people aren't together yet.
I'd actually like to get the perspective from a vendor partner, Todd Taylor right here. Todd, you were 12 years at Darden? 14 years. So you went to the other side recently. So I'd love to hear from your perspective just how it's been and obviously the importance of communication.
Well, thank you. After spending 14 years at Darden in the lead design role there, and then jumping across the aisle to the dark side, I guess, and being a consultant, I think that what Tiffany and others have really stated is communication is key. And partnering is something that you can't do lightheartedly. You really have to become a part or be one. And as I sat on their side of the fence for so many years, I really didn't understand that until I crossed over. Because the outside resources, the vendors, the consultants, you guys are a tremendous resource that is so valuable to their success. And the more that you can become a part of what they do and they allow you to be a part of it, I think the solutions are going to be much better. And as time goes on, we have to help each other. And it's not just helping them or others that are in in their position, it's helping one another. It's collaborating and looking for opportunities to find better solutions. This is a problem that has been stated is not going to go away tomorrow. So we have to reinvent how we look at things. And I think that as time goes on, that partnership, the communication is going to be critical to the success of all of us.
Anyone else want to chime in there? Anything from what's been said so far in terms of, yeah?
And a reminder, we have the QR code on the table, so if you just want to throw in some questions or comments, please do.
Thank you. Good morning. I just had a comment and question. So I think I'm on the vendor side. Jacqueline was 7. I can speak for as a guest and a client of all your restaurants. Literally so grateful during COVID. I mean, you guys saved a lot of people sanity. So we looked forward to drive-through nights. And if it took an hour, we did not care. We stayed in that line. So, all the workers in this industry really, from a consumer side, totally different perspective of that. And then I wanted to make a comment question towards Jim, what you had said about, the labor force and raising kids in today's world. They all want to make a lot of money. My two want to be TikTok stars and all that crap. But, I grew up working in the fast food industry, and, I still say to this day, it taught me tons of life skills. And, I made my one daughter work in the fast food restaurant, and, my son, as soon as he's of age, he will do the same. But from a labor perspective, what are you guys offering as far as the people coming in, working registers or back house? Are there opportunities for growth for them to get to, an executive level or management level? Just, as a parent and a consumer, what is out there, to kind of guide these kids that, it's a start, but there's a much bigger picture. So that's all.
Let me just, I would say that one of the things, I'm far enough in my career that I've had the good fortune of kind of picking where I want to work. And you don't get that as a younger age, right? You just got to work. But I know that when I made the decision to come to Sweetgreen, I wanted to go work for a place I thought my kids could work. You kind of grow up, and I had great mentors when I was at Home Depot and et cetera, when I grew up in a young age, and kind of the pass it forward mentality. And I think that, for us, creating a place where if you do well, you do good. I think that's a big part of our mission, is the fact that we think sustainability is an important aspect of both humanity and also our supply chain. And when you're in a high growth mode at a company, opportunities become, because growth creates opportunities. So as we want to, double, triple, quadruple the size of our company, we're very much focused on going from within. It's one of our key principles in our HR policies is coach, mentor, grow. Leaders stay calm in crisis and coach. And making sure that that's the same thing we have in our stores. And so, if you come on board and you start in the kitchen, and we've kind of flattened out the responsibilities because, inside of our store, we want you to be, have specific skill sets, but also be a generalist. If you're always just doing one thing, it ends up becoming very unengaging, right? And a big part of the fun is engaging with the consumer. And engaging with the brand. So we spend a lot, every store, every morning we have, a sweet talk where we talk about, where people's, we do a heart check and kind of where people are at. And it's a very open and almost therapeutic way to open a day and open a store. And everyone kind of gets grounded in the day and gets, and I think one of the big things about being present. Hey, today is today, and tomorrow will take care of itself if you take care of today, and kind of passing those skill sets on to a younger generation. And so we spend a ton of time in coaching and trying to grow up our teammates, because when you want to open 35, 45, 55, 100, 150 and go international, if you're not creating a talent pipeline internally, you've done something really wrong.
I'd like to add to that a little bit, because you're touching on something we're talking about separately, and that is career paths, right? And where do you start your career path, and what does that look like? I'll say the single deciding factor of any individual restaurant success is the manager or leader of that particular restaurant. You can have a fantastic location and a challenged manager, and that location will not do well. It's also a discipline and a career in an industry that you can get from the bottom to the top in operations and not have what many would consider a formal college education. And I think in these days where college has gotten so expensive and out of touch for so many people, to have that opportunity in this business, in this industry that you mentioned, connected with people during a challenging time in our society, I think we should promote that more. We spend a lot of time with our franchisee and our company owned, really developing, internal leadership. And to have that opportunity in an industry that doesn't require you being burdened with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and you can get all the way, there are chief operating officers in companies in operations that started as a line worker. So, I think we have a ton of opportunity there.
Yeah, well, look, we'll stay. We're jumping around a bit, but I would like to stay on this issue here and sort of shift it towards the changing role of what you guys do. So, we've touched on how the industry is changing and how fluid everything is right now, and things are changing so quickly. So, what is the future restaurant development design professional? What skills are going to be needed moving into the future, and how are you going to attract the right talent for that? It's not as simple as it was, 5, 10, when you guys started, however many years ago. So any thoughts on that?
Are you asking any one of us?
Yeah, I'll open up to, I'd like all of you to have a take. I'll start with you, Tiffany.
I thought we were going to rock, paper, scissors or something. I'd say, it is pretty challenging, and this kind of goes back to your question earlier. It is pretty challenging right now to find great talent in this field. It's not that, there's a lot of choices. So you do really need to come down to being the employment of choice. And I think part of it is, creating an environment that is fun, that is interactive, where people have autonomy, where they have the ability to, voice their concerns, voice their ideas, come to the table with ways that they think could shape the business or make it better or faster or whatever it may be. And really having an open mind and allowing those conversations to happen. And not making decisions in a vacuum. So that's something that we've done, but finding great talent is somewhat challenging. I mean, luckily for me, I've been pretty successful in finding people that have moved with me through brands, which has been nice. And I know them, I know how they would work, I know what they're capable of, I know what I can put on them, I know what I can ask of them, and then they can come to me and ask anything as well. So, that's been pretty successful, but as we, continue to grow and continue to want to add more and more people to the team, we'll be reaching out to people who are doing what we're doing, who've been a part of brands that are doing what we're doing. And, a lot of times we'll use LinkedIn, we'll use Indeed, we'll use word of mouth, we'll reach out to others. But it is challenging because there are a lot of opportunities out there, and we just have to make, the brand that we're working for seem that much better and really come to the table and make it a reality, because people will not stay if they don't get what they were promised.
Anything you want to add there?
I think the question was maybe, how did it change? I think that, when I came on in the industry back in last century, I guess it was true, right? Back in the 90s, skill sets were very technical, right? And there was a lot of research that had to be done. I came up as an architect, and now most of that information is ubiquitous. It's there in the internet or whatever. So, the technical part is not as important. I think it's still sound, but it's not the way you kind of come up in the industry anymore in real estate and design or construction. I think that the most important thing is can you communicate? Right? Can people talk, and can you talk through issues? And when we're hiring, talent trumps experience every time, because you can coach talent to get experience. So I think for us, we're constantly looking for, mindset, the ability to kind of personally have integrity, and then also understand, can you communicate and talk? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Even when you get kids out of college and interview them, they just can't talk. They don't understand the language or the lexicon of how they're trying to get their ideas across. And I think that if you can express an idea, I think the most important thing in any business, especially in design and construction or something that's creative, is that, things don't do things, people do things. And so if you don't have great people who can communicate their visions, then you can't execute them.
It's because you've got to start communicating with these people in memes, Jim. That's the only way that you
Yeah,
can get through it.
my kids have put some stuff on my phone, and I still have not got the gist of it. So, but I do have a good sample set of a 26, a 21, and an 18-year-old trying to coach up dad.
We have an audience question back here.
Thanks. Hey, I'm Nima Fazeli with SBE. Curious to know what each of you see the next 2 to 4 years. I won't get too far in the future because obviously who the hell knows. But the next maybe 2 to 4 years, what does it look like coming out of COVID? How are your strategies shifting? And what do you guys generally see this kind of industry of ours evolving into and through looking forward?
I'll jump in, I guess. My crystal ball is a little fuzzy, so I'll do my best. I think we need to focus, at least for our brands, really focus on making a compelling and interesting experience for our guests. And in some ways, it's an interior environmental experience with the Buffalo Wild Wings. On the other end of the spectrum, it's you could look at Jimmy John's. We just opened a new concept just down the road here, about half hour, Bartow, Florida, a modular freestanding Jimmy John's. Recognizing, you mentioned the drive-through earlier, Jim. To me, that's one of the biggest opportunities out there. Is how do we make an interesting experience for somebody who's not going inside the space? Sonic does it great. We have a drive-in, right? That's one end. But when you look at that new concept, we really focused on, what are we trying to tell the guests? We can do something interesting architecturally. It doesn't have to just be a white stucco box. There's a lot we can do, and I think we did a lot with that. Every side of that building is telling the Jimmy John story. You're going to circulate that entire building. You're going to drive by it. You're going to notice it. You're going to see it. You're going to want to go to it. Overall in the industry, we can do better. One of the things I say is if you have an architectural concept and you can take your sign off and put somebody else's sign up and operate very easily, we failed. There's nothing, we don't own anything then. And I think the future for us is to own the outward facing of our brand and be able to tell that story in a compelling way. And stay relevant and interesting, because there's a lot out there. You can disappear real quick. And I think you're going to see us across all of our brands do that.
Anyone else like to chime in there?
I think that was really good.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, ultimately, though, we don't know, right? I mean, that's you're asking, hopefully some fairly intelligent people up here about what the future looks like, and we don't know. Right, we have guesses, just like you have guesses, and they may be more intelligent guesses. We have more information, but I think at the end of the day, the key to the next couple of years is be bold, right, with your and be decisive, and I think also be flexible. And they're not mutually exclusive. Everything we do inside of our store right now is made to move around. We don't know if we want to expand it, contract it, add to the front of house. But so most of us, when we're doing our design work, is about the formation of flexibility for the future. Because I've been with brands long enough that you did design something, all of a sudden you built your remodel. 3 years from now you're remodeling it. Damn it, that was a lot of money twice. And when you get judged on your investment as a CDO, doubling down on the same piece of property isn't necessarily seen as a positive sign. So making sure that today the stores of today aren't the remodels of tomorrow. I mean, you'll always do something to keep your brand relevant and fresh and exciting and engaging, but you sure as heck don't want to rip something out because you built it wrong, because you didn't have the forethought to know that what you think you probably don't know everything. And if you get it 80% right, then you're probably done a good job. So for us, we're very much around understanding format flexibility and shifting in and out of how our back of house can be managed, and creating, again, this kind of this formative flexibility for the store.
Andrew, I'd actually like to ask you, I guess you just hit on the Jimmy John's that you guys just did modular. So how is modular going to play into the future for you guys? And I know Dutch Bros, you guys are doing that, right, Aaron? You guys are doing, yeah. So I'd like to just hear from you, Andrew,
sure.
Maybe even Aaron, to get your perspective on using modular moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, modular won't be the only thing we do. We'll never get there. I think it's an option. It's a compelling option, though. What it's enabling us to do is control the construction process. And it's not really, the way we're doing it is not modular in the way a lot of people think modular is. You can really look at it more like offsite construction. It is built in a warehouse. It is in a controlled environment. It does not snow or rain inside that warehouse. It can be delivered to the site and operating, a week or two later. Hopefully, all of your site development lines up, right? So we work on that and then ship it. Our buildings ship almost completely together. They show up full of equipment, full of finishes. There are pieces that come together, but the way we're approaching it is not a flat pack kind of IKEA style modular. It's really mostly built when it shows up. It's enabling us speed to market. It's enabling us to manage through weather challenges, and it's really just letting us control a lot of the development cycle. At the end of the day, it's not always a straight cost savings against some traditional construction methodologies, but I think it's going to get there. I think as we grow at scale, we just opened Clinton, right? Jeff, Clinton just opened. Our first Sonic modular just opened. We have a bunch of Duncan Goes in progress. We're learning. We're on number 2. They're stacked up in the factory as we speak, but we're learning as we go. We're going to get better at it. The key to modular, though, at the end of the day is, which is also great for us on the development side, is you can't really change your mind once you're down the road. So, we all deal with a lot of voices and a lot of opinions in our line of work. So, change is not productive, in the moment for modular. You can do longer duration change. Like, our Jimmy John's is already evolving, right? Because we got the first one, we're learning. You'll see the next 4 that are in the hopper are going to look 90% the same, but we're learning. So that's a big opportunity for us.
So Aaron, at Dutch Bros, what's your experience been?
I think that'd be a good question for Dan because you probably angered him quite a bit. We've opened 28 modular buildings, and in the last 2 years, I sound really funny here, don't I? Oh, it's just me. Oh, okay. In the last 2 years, what we've noticed is we saved about $75,000 per building, which is incredible. Well, I think we've also saved somewhere around 22 days every building we built.
That's it. It's the time.
The truth is, we started doing this because people challenged us to. Just challenge me to do something. We'll figure it out. I wasn't looking to save money or time. I think when construction prices start to settle for traditional construction again, we might not see those same savings anymore. But I think something that's really exciting when I hear a company as big as Inspire is trying to figure this out, I want to follow your lead. I want you to spend all that money because our little, Mark and Dan here on my team are either pulling their hair out with the things I'm asking them to do. And we're happy with the product, but it's been a struggle. And there's a reason people aren't doing it everywhere. So we got to keep working through that.
Perfect. We haven't got a hell of a lot of time left, and just as we wrap up, Jim, you're talking about the future. You obviously haven't got a crystal ball, what you guys are doing tangibly with flexibility in your restaurants it runs very in line with the need to sort of keep flexible moving forward. So one thing we haven't really touched on a great deal is digital, and this is something in our conversations with everybody is, well, how are we supposed to do this, and how are we supposed to keep up with the customer? I hate that kind of terminology, but there are a lot of questions around it. And I guess for all of you, are restaurant companies doing enough right now to keep flexible and prepare themselves for a future where there are a lot of unknowns in incorporating digital? And what are your thoughts there?
Me, again. I think that, digital is just is another term for convenient, right? I think that, for us, we were, fortunate to be a first mover in a lot of the digital space because our owners are 35, and that was the world they grew up in. We grew up with an iPhone. I did not. I grew up with a phone. And so, there's a different expectation of what you can do now, right? When you carry the same technology of the space shuttle in your hand and what flexibility that gives you. And so from our standpoint, we have a very symbiotic relationship with digital in our store dev group because really it's about the customer journey. And is that customer, and it's all about the customer journey, because if you can't figure out the customer journey, then you don't have anything to talk about. So for us, the digital is a channel, and there's a customer journey on our app that allows someone to make a kind of a predetermined decision about what they want to order with a lot of flexibility, and then it comes into our store. And then, once that order is in, what is that journey inside the store for that person to either pick it up or is it going to be delivered, and having those different paths inside the store, because again, you don't want to have, it's almost like transportational architecture and how you design airports. You want to have certain ways for people to get around so it's not very confusing. And so we have very, very specific areas designed inside of our stores for digital pickup, for vendor pickup, for the dine-in, so you don't have that kind of confusion and controversy inside the front of house near POS. And I think really understanding the customer journey and designing for digital, because the world is going to high convenience or hyper convenience. I think Panera's going to talk about this later on, where, is it did you order online? Is it being delivered to you? Are you picking it up? Are you picking it up in a car? Are you picking it up in person? Are you curbside? Are you coming in and ordering and just sitting down and eating? Are you coming in and ordering and taking it with you? I mean, there's all these different things, but it's all about what the customer wants, where they want it, how they want it. And so for us, again, we talk about flexibility of store design. We're doing the same thing with our app. And making sure that, hey, do you want to pick it up? Do you want to have it delivered? Are you meeting friends? I mean, I think there's this whole thing about the next evolution is how you make it more communal, right? It's like, because, it's really hard to go out to dinner with somebody on an app, right? It's like, hey, let's go meet and go pick it up together. I mean, you're going to see these things where ultimately it's about mass individuality, and then how do you make it mass communal, I think will be the next step, because dining out used to be something you want to do with people.
Any other thoughts there?
Yeah, digital's a path, right? I think there's couple things going on there. One is you order digital, and in most cases, you're still coming to the location. You're still coming to pick it up yourself, perhaps. There's obviously third-party delivery. Or kids. If you get into ghost kitchens and third-party delivery, the app is the experience. The app is the brand. That has to match up and have a thread back to the brand. But in many cases, digital, they're still coming to the store. They're still coming to the restaurant. They're still coming to pick this up. They're still having an experience. They're actually having two experiences. They're having the digital experience and they're having the store experience. And I think it's important for at least us as a design team to make sure that narrative holds up, that thread holds up, and there's a payoff for the digital. Two things we're trying to do is make sure as we go into new formats, in particular in markets where we have low penetration in right now, we'll call it a low penetration, high cost market, right? You can think of those urban areas, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, LAs, where you don't see a lot of Sonic, you don't see a lot of Arby's. Why? Well, we know why. It requires a different format. It's a different cost structure. That's going to rely on digital. Obviously, what does that mean? We're going to be working. We are working quite a bit on that into the future. I think you'll see that over the next year or so. But making sure we make that connection between the digital experience and the in-store experience, because many times it's actually both, not just one or the other.
Tiffany?
I think they pretty much summed that up. That was pretty good. I mean, I think Sweetgreen does a great job with it, and the things you're saying are great. So
perfect. And look, we can't believe we've run out of time, but we do have one last audience question, and I'll open it. Probably you, Andrew, but maybe for anyone else who wants to answer. Okay. You did touch on ghost kitchens. Mm-hmm. How much is that going to play into your strategy longer term? And then with that strategy, how do you maintain brand integrity?
Great question and challenge. We are, like everybody else in that space, working with some partners. We opened our Alliance Kitchen, I think I mentioned, in more downtown Atlanta. It's all of our brands. We're learning a lot at what's doing well, or it's doing more well than others there. I think they're all doing well. Our Rusty Taco brand that is not in the Atlanta market is doing very well out of the Atlanta Alliance Kitchen. We have no presence of Rusty Taco right now in Atlanta, so it's essentially a virtual brand, which I think has been a very interesting learning. Been working with Cloud and Reef like everybody else. We'll see where that business goes. I think there's some challenges there, but we're certainly going to do that. I think it's just really another arrow on the quiver of opportunities to get to your customer where it makes sense. It's not, we're not going to become all ghost kitchen. That's not the intent. We're probably not going to open any more Alliance Kitchens necessarily. But there's going to be other format opportunities. I think we look at our footprint and our system. There's opportunities to do, other brands out of places we already have, or do we have underutilized units, right, that were built at a different generation. You look at some of the Arby's, they're gigantic, they're 80 seats. I don't need an 80-seat Arby's anymore, right? It doesn't make any sense. What else can we do with that building that we're paying for every month? And so there's a ton of format innovation, not just new concept format innovation, but how do you take your existing footprint and how do you look at it in a much different way through the lens of what we're experiencing today?
Perfect. Tiffany, Andrew, and Jim, we've run out of time completely, but look, thank you so much for contributing your voice to Restaurant Spaces in this way and setting the tone for the event. Thanks so much.